Welcome, everyone. You're listening to the Dateable AF podcast because women dating women is wild, wonderful, and occasionally a disaster. I am your host, Dr. Sarah Kyle, a therapist in private practice.
And I'm a co-host, Rachel Howell, a researcher extraordinaire and a single lesbian dater.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 9 of the Dateable AF podcast. Today, our topic is that a purse or a red flag? We are interviewing a very special guest today, Michelle Casanova. But before we get started with talking to Michelle, we wanted to answer a question that was sent in to us by one of our listeners. The question was this: I've heard you both say that the ability to be friends with your ex is a green flag, but you end every show by saying, don't text your ex. What's up with that? Rachel, I will pitch that to you and let you start with answering that question.
I think that we first have to own the fact that we just like a fun tagline, and that is something that lesbians are known to do. So there's also just some fun in that, and it brands us. And then there's the real part of that in our episode where we did talk about exes. Relationship with exes can be a green flag, but the way that you get into those and turn them into a green flag matters. And it can be, there are a lot of red flags along the way. So don't text your ex all the time, especially when you're getting into a new relationship. And we just love the tagline. What do you think, Sarah?
I agree. When Joe and I first started dating, and I was also still drinking alcohol, I would sometimes go out and have some drinks. And as Joe and I were coming home, I would say, I'm going to text my ex-girlfriend. And Joe would just roll her eyes and be like, okay, girl, you go ahead. And it was really never a good idea. The next morning, I never woke up feeling great about that. So I think the tagline has some merit.
You think? And the fact that you no longer drink probably.
That's a topic for a different episode. But yes, don't drone text your ex, especially. Maybe that's what we should say.
Oh, God.
But
well, hopefully that's
a question.
Yes, we hope that answered your question. If not, well, you can text Joe and ask her to
ask her to explain it to you.
Yeah, there you go.
That's right.
Well, so we're very excited. This is our first guest for in our podcast journey, and we're very pleased today to have Michelle Casanova, who frankly is a lot more experienced at all this than we are. And we're going to be excited to hear what she has today on our episode. The episode be called, Is That a Purse or a Red Flag? It's very relevant to what she's going to talk about today. And just a little bit about Michelle. She describes herself as a journeywoman of lesbian dating. I love that term. Journeywoman. She's produced a short film called Perspective, and I love that as well. Obviously, you're good with words. And this is a bit about lesbians that carry purses versus those that don't, and I'm assuming you probably have some stories behind that. She's won an A-Glyph and has taken her short film to P-Town and to D.C. That's very cool. And she's a graduate of the UT McCombs School of Business with an MBA. Sarah and I are also sort of semi-graduates we're little bitty graduates of the McCombs School. She's a professional writer, producer, and director of promotional media. And Michelle is a single lesbian currently in the Austin dating bee. So Michelle, welcome to our podcast, Dateable AF.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here and to be the first guest.
I'm so excited that you're our first guest, too. We thought you would be a perfect first guest because literally, Michelle, every time I talk to you, I laugh so hard. I think that you have the best sense of humor. And I also know that you're a great communicator. And I knew that you wouldn't hold back in sharing your opinions with us.
That is me. Yes. I want to answer that question also about texting your ex, because
Yes.
I've gone on a date where I've had leftover food and I've asked if on the way home I could drop my leftovers off to an ex. Extreme, except I went into that newer dating experience letting that person know that I was close friends with this ex. And so I think communication is vital for context and to be upfront about what your situation is. And
how did they respond to that?
She was great. I mean, she understood because she had a similar situation. You know, is the lesbian pool, dating pool small? It depends. But in the case of me and that one woman, it kind of was. She had really close-knit exes, and I had some close-knit exes. And so she was okay with me taking my leftovers to my ex, and it worked out. I mean, it was just one of those things. We were adults and mature. And so I think it just depends on the context and how upfront you are when you meet somebody. You know, many years ago, that our exes were our family when people couldn't come out to their own family. So I think there should be some grace in how we accept people that we have that are our selected family. And as long as we're open with our communication, I think that's a big green flag.
That is a really good point. Although I'm not sure I'm going to highly recommend stopping at your ex's house to drop off your leftovers, but I'm glad it worked out well.
It could have been a party foul. It really could have been. But I think you're making a good point. I think when we talk about don't text your ex, what we really are saying is a really new, fresh ex that you have not reestablished a new relationship with is probably not the one you want to drop your leftovers off with or text. But if you have established a different relationship and a long term, like some of us have, then I think that's fine.
Yeah. So, Michelle, when Rachel and I launched our first episode of the podcast, we both told the story of the first time that we kissed a woman. I would love to hear your story about the first time you kissed a woman.
It is actually quite a magnificent story. I was working in retail, and I had some regular customers that would come in, and I knew they were lesbians. I was not a lesbian at that time. But they said, hey, when you get off work, do you want to meet us at a bar? And I said, sure. And so I did. And they introduced me to some of their friends. And there was one woman who was just so outstandingly beautiful. She was dressed really confidently and had this really cute hat and these beautiful bright red lips. And when that song, You Spin Me Round Like a Record, Baby, right? That's how old I am, came on, I asked her to dance. And so we ended up closing the bar down, and she asked where I was parked. And I said, well, I'm closer, so get in my car and I'll take you to your car. Wow. Then me, the non-lesbian, said, I'm not going to take you to your car. I'm going to take you to Denny's for hot cocoa. I don't know where that came from. Do not know. I have no clue. It was summertime. That worked out okay. I left enough of an impression that she asked me to her house the next day. And it was very appropriate. She was really into Architectural Digest. So we were laying on her bed perpendicular looking at Architectural Digest when she just moved in to give me a kiss. And that was my entry into the lesbian.
And what do you remember about the kiss?
You know, it went quickly, but in slow motion because, well, it wasn't even a romantic moment. It's Architectural Digest. And she's just the kiss she's looking at me. And you know what? I still talk to her today. We, many years later, but we celebrate the anniversary of that kiss every year.
Is that the one you dropped off the leftovers to?
No, I have many exes. I don't experience lesbian. No, this is a different one. But I would to her. But we celebrate the anniversary of that kiss. She has told me that I have been a very good lesbian. She said it because she was the first woman I kissed. And, your first woman that you kiss and have certain intimacies with is like your sensei. And they stay with you forever. And that's what your persona in the lesbian world is kind of born from that. And so I went out with her briefly, and then 7 years later, we actually reconnected and went out again. And I was really happy because I was very inexperienced when I first met her. And so the second time around, it was great fun and just really solidified our role as friends and almost family.
I love that. That is awesome.
Yeah.
That's good. I'm snickering because mine was, of course, in 10th grade and with a 12th grader. And over time, when I gained more experience, because I was completely reliant upon her, assuming she was showing me the way, when I got out there and learned of the other ways that she hadn't shown me, I went and I saw her again. I was like, hey, you were shortchanging me. Wait a minute.
That is correct. And 7 years later, I said to her, you were really stupid. I said, the things you told me were just like, that's not how it was. And she said, this is how lesbians are. She goes, don't touch me in public. I have all these rules. And the second time around, she was completely different. I said, that's so lame. Thank goodness I did not listen to advance on my own.
Exactly.
It was like, if I had stayed in that really narrow lane, I don't think I would have a classification actually today. It would just be some weirdo person who did not know how to get a grip on things. But yeah, we were young. I was 20. I think I was 20 and she was 21. So we were young.
We passed up our teachers.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, we became the senseis.
Absolutely. Takes a lot of research to become a sensei.
It does.
So I have a question for you. You know that we talk about the podcast audience that we are reaching out to and all the letters that go with the possibilities of our audience. So which letter do you identify with, or do you identify with any particular letter?
This is a very loaded question for me because I also used to be an executive director of a local gay and lesbian organization. And at the time, we didn't have all those letters. It was just L, G, and B. Just a teeny bit of T was coming.
Small T.
It was like lowercase b. And I was skeptical about the B. And I'm like, because when I was younger, as probably when y'all were younger, being a lesbian was a truly alternative lifestyle. You didn't date in open. You went to the bar at nighttime because you knew that others like you assembled there, and you had a really good chance of meeting another woman because that's why they were there, to meet women. And then when you start adding a lot of different letters and a lot of different preferences and just general people, and then things you can be same-sex dancing in a heterosexual bar, it's really difficult to figure out who are your options here. I am an L, all the way L. And then when you go from there, am I a femme or a butch? Well, when I was younger, those were your choices. There were fewer choices way back when. It made it so much easier. I look like an F for sure, an LF, lesbian femme. But I am actually a very, I think a kind of a bit androgynous because I can do so many. I've done a ton of plumbing. My mother tells me the other day, she said, you never fix my air conditioner. My daughter can do it, but that's not her job because that is who I am. I don't have any boundaries. I wasn't raised with a specific gender role. So if I had to mix in with lesbians of my age group, I'm an L and an F who's very handy. So
you wear a fine tool belt.
I do, and I have all tools.
Oh, yes. See,
there you go. That's sexy.
That is here. Yes, well. First off, we are all about being garden variety lesbians. We used to be like the centerfold of Vogue. All of us being in the similar age category, we were the edgy ones, and now we are just garden variety. And so, yeah, we don't make centerfold of anything anymore.
Lesbian Vogue.
I used to feel like I was going to have a second coming. And I remember telling one of my well, my late partner, actually, I said, I think I'm going to age okay. So there might be opportunity for me later in life. Right. I don't know what made me think that. I also said something stupid like, I'm only ever going to date 10 women in my life. That's dumb. And I wasn't a drinker. I just said these things sober. But so I do.
No excuse.
No excuse, just out there with my effervescence. And but it is interesting because when you talk also about dating, and I've listened to your podcast, and you had a podcast about, what are you attracted to? And do you know your type? And what type are you? I had met one woman on one of my dating excursions, as I call them. I was walking up to her. We were going to sit outside to eat lunch. And as I'm walking toward her, she's shaking her head no. I don't know if she realized it, but she was shaking her head no.
Ow.
And I don't think she even took off her sunglasses. And we ate. Well, she ate really fast. And then she basically said that I was just, this is years ago too. She said at that time, I was just a middle-aged woman putting myself out there to catch something better. And I thought, that is so interesting that someone felt confident enough to say that, or someone hurt them enough for them to be so reactionary. And, the thing about dating for me is I don't take a lot of things personally. She didn't know me. If she'd really known me and said something very, against my beliefs, I might feel different, but she didn't know me. And so I ended up, she made a very fatal mistake. She sent me a text after and said, we'll never date, obviously, but we can be friends. And I'm like, okay. So we've had several lunches and dinners and drinks because I insist on that. I want people to get to know me so they can dislike me genuinely or like like me because you didn't know me or weren't sure if I was an L and F. I just get to know somebody too. And I like that, when I was in high school, I had a friend, she would always pair me up. We would do this to each other if we were going out with somebody, and I dated guys back then. She's saying, come along, you should go on every date because they may have friends. They may have friends. So I think it's important for people interested in dating to be open-minded and not to get wrapped up in, it's going to be, all of this glitter is going to fall on us and people will be in white and we're going to walk down the aisle to our, happy ever. It doesn't start that way. But, hang in there because get to know them. Let them get to know you. I mean, that's what dating is.
Yeah. And there's something else about that story that I want to address. Well, there are two things. One is that there is no reason to ever be unkind to someone. If someone's not your type, it's okay, but that's not something wrong with them. That just means they're not your type. And saying to someone, you're just a middle-aged lesbian looking for something better, it's like that. Why would you say something that's unkind? There's just no need to ever do that.
It was unkind. And when I tell the story, they're like, why did you ever be friends with her?
That was my second question. So what allowed you or drew you to going back into the situation with someone that you already knew had the ability to be so unkind?
I think everybody has the ability to be reactionary and to not put their best foot forward. That just happens every day. But I want to give people an opportunity that maybe if they were having a bad day or something to try it again. And I'm not kidding. I want people to dislike me for real reasons. So get to know me. Let me get to know you. I was at that time, I was looking to make friends in the lesbian I just want to make some friends. And so that's what I was trying to do. That's also very, you have to have a tough skin and you have to be really open to just putting yourself out there to meet people.
I like that.
Yeah.
So speaking of the dating bee, I know you have over the years, as you alluded to, spent some time off and on in the dating bee in Austin. And I would love to hear kind of what that overall experience has been like for you.
I'm going to start it like this. Have you ever walked into the darkness? Yeah. Because I didn't grow up here. I moved here from San Antonio. And it's so silly because I was dating someone in San Antonio that I found out was a ne'er-do-well. That's how old I am. She was a ne'er-do-well. And it was really bad. And she had bought me this shark on a stick little toy. And I was at work, found out she was a ne'er-do-well. I broke that thing over my leg. And I told in front of my coworkers, I said, I'm moving to Austin. I just said that, right? They started collecting boxes for me. And so I hadn't really thought about it, but I'm like, okay, I guess I should go. They collected boxes. They did a farewell lunch and I came here and I didn't know anybody here. I knew one person here, but I didn't know how to break into it. I just remember when a few years previously, I would come to Austin and go to bars that had beautiful, beautiful women, great music. It was so delicious. I used to leave my house at 10 p.m. to get here just in enough time for the best 2 hours of the night.
We were laughing about that this past week about how now if I'm not in my pajamas by 10 p.m., something's wrong. And we used to be just getting dressed at 10 p.m., getting ready to go out.
Well, and I drove from San Antonio to Austin.
Oh, wow.
I had that level of energy back then. But when I moved to Austin, it was different. Back then, people didn't want to meet their partner in a bar. So I went to the back of the Chronicle and put an ad. No pictures. Like, if you're afraid of the apps, this would have really horrified you.
Right.
It's just a little teeny, you had word limits. You put some kind of ad together. It was the back of the Chronicle. People would read it, and they had like a phone number you called into and the other person called into, and you could connect without giving each other the numbers. And so I actually met several women that way and had many interesting adventures. And one of those adventures, and it made me laugh when I saw your promo for the podcast, because y'all were wearing the white shirts and the jeans, because my experience was the woman herself was lovely. She took me our first date to a house party, and all the women there were wearing white button-up shirts and either jeans or khaki shorts. I wore it was summer, so I wore a summer dress and I carried a purse.
All right. I feel this might have led into what inspired your perspective.
This is where it's going. So it was a very cute little house. Everyone was sitting down, having a great time. But I walk in with this just very nondescript bag, and everyone gets up from their seats and they walk to the table. They would rather stand than be close to me. And there were only 3 subjects being discussed that whole night. It was riding bikes, not cycling, just riding bikes, Taos, New Mexico, and herb gardening. And I had not been to Taos, and I did not do herb gardening. It was homogenistic of the homosexuals. It was like really, And then they asked me, why are you carrying a purse? Because are you perpetuating the patriarchal society that men have put you in?
So no, I had my period and I got some tampons in here.
Well, I didn't open with that line. What I said was, I carry my shit in a bag. This is my socialization. My mother carried a purse. Her mother before her carried a purse. That's my socialization. This stuff is in it. And it was just a really interesting, it stayed with me many, many years after. So many years after, I went out with that woman who's very lovely, just that one time. And then many years later, I was sitting at California Pizza Kitchen with my then partner, who had just started business school of her own at McCombs. And it was a rare outing because she worked and studied. And so I opened the Chronicle. See, the Chronicle goes to my life. I opened the Chronicle. A-List has got their lineup, and all the films for women sucked so hard. They were just horrid. They were just like, it's why I think lesbians have a hard time dating, because these films promoted unhealthy types of relationships, like dating your married neighbor or dating one of your students. And I'm like, I cannot make a worse film than these, so I'm going to make my own film. And on a little 3-inch sticky note, part of one, because I had written some stuff on it, I pulled it out of my purse, and I wrote my idea on it. And I told Diane, I said, I'm going to make a film. But she was all about school. So I found someone who had a camera, and I wrote out the film, Perspective, play on words. and made the film. And Diane was working. She would be at home studying. She saw me coming and going. Have you both seen the film at this point?
Yes.
Okay, so I gotta say, in hindsight, I had never studied film, never dreamt of making a film. I just thought, I can't make a worse film than what is out there right
now. So you literally just jumped into doing something you had never done before.
I totally did that. That's how I am.
That's amazing. I love it.
And it's got an original soundtrack score, and wrote the whole thing out. And what I love about it is that it doesn't have heads in it. It's not at the perspective of the purse. The purse is the star.
I did not pick up on the perspective, but I did pick up on the fact that you didn't show people's faces.
I didn't show heads, but I actually recreated that party event where the girl goes with her purse to a party and all the people in the white shirts shun her. And so the film ended up being a few vignettes of a woman who is so in love. She just carries a purse, and everywhere she goes, people, lesbians, are offended by her purse. Until the end of the last vignette, she's at a bar, and someone's watching her, an admirer's watching her. And when she leaves the bar, she forgets her purse. So the admirer grabs the purse and runs it out to her. And at the end, that's where the camera pans up and you see both their faces, and they're united because they both have a hand on the purse.
On the purse, yes.
Because instead of the purse repelling that person, it was what connected them. And when I finished the film, I told Diane, I said, listen, the film's done. You really need to see it. And she couldn't believe I made a film for real. And so she watched it twice a day for 30 days. And then I premiered it at Austin Film Studio, and I showed my parents at their house. And my dad said, and this was amazing, my father said, it's not 2 mules for Sister Sarah, but it's pretty good.
That was his gold standard.
Well, this is a guy who doesn't say great white shark, just the white shark. They're not great. So for him to say this to me was like,
that was huge.
It was huge. And the film got a lot of play. It showed at many, many festivals locally, and then in Provincetown, Massachusetts, and Washington, D.C. And I did go to the Washington, D.C. Showing because it was really an international showing, and it was neat to be in the audience because that film festival, that was lesbian date night. And every time I showed this film, I've shown this film to all people. I had one guy in law enforcement feel that it was a good film to show law enforcement just about the dynamics of people and how they are and how...
That's interesting.
It really was. He was really a big fan of it. And after I made that film and showed that film, it didn't matter if I had been a live organ donor. No matter what I had done previously, I was now filmmaker Michelle Casanova. So I had to hurry and go take a quick summer class to figure out what I was, doing. And I made more films after that, all in a lesbian-themed short films, because lesbians... So when you're a lesbian growing up, you don't, in our age range, you didn't see other lesbians dating in high school. You didn't see them going to prom. You don't have the socialization that you have when you're heterosexual. Now it's different, but back then it really was not. And so when you look at films, the films were dating your student, dating your married neighbor. Those are not positive stories. And they set people up for a big heartache because, well, those are just not good ideas. I don't make those kind of films. I didn't have a traumatic coming out with my family. So my films are based on lesbian behaviors or phenomenons. Like my second film is Potluck, and it kind of covers the polyamory that exists within cliques of lesbians who, and again, based on a true story, my late partner and I had gotten invited to a monthly potluck, and we went several months, and we must have gone to 5 of those when someone came in and said, we got married, and they were talking, and then one of the other women said, oh, your rings are different than the rings you and I had. And I stopped because one woman had been married to a different woman. Then they broke up and then they reconfigured themselves. And now they were married to different people. And I'm not an ingenue here or provincial, but I was still like, wait a minute. Is this why we were involved? Like, well, I made a film called Potluck, and it's based on that exact experience.
I met you when you were premiering that film, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, you came to that premiere.
I did.
And I'm going to give a big shout out to Margaret Bassett, who's in all my films. We've agreed that for the anything behind the scenes, if I get famous, that it will be one of those things. And Margaret Bassett, it was in all of your films.
All of your films. I all and I'm like, well, you know, type thing.
Right. And then the film I made after that was Fresh Rosemary, which is about a woman whose parent, she just dates really horrible people, and she had a terrible breakup, and her family just wants her to be like their other neighbor's daughter is, who met a nice girl. They want their daughter to meet a nice girl and settle down. And so she decides to take up cooking, and she literally gets back into the market. It's like the supermarket, and she goes to ask ask the produce manager, Margaret Bassett, where she's looking for she's looking for rosemary. And Margaret says, of course you are. And then she calls the worker Rosemary to see you. And then they end up having a lovely, the movie wraps up, but the pictures and the clothes show their relationship. And it ends on a really positive note where you could literally be shopping for an ingredient and meet somebody.
Meet the love of your life. I love that. And I love that you're portraying things so positively.
It's positive.
Yeah, I have just a comment I guess I want to make about that, going all the way back to you talking about the letters that you identify with, being lesbian, being a femme, and potentially wearing a tool belt. And then you're now, your story is about carrying a purse, being the only lesbian in the room with a purse, and the assumptions that people make around those things is very interesting to me, because those women didn't know that you were a mechanic and you were a tool belt. They looked at you and they saw what they assumed was the case. And I love that conversation, because I think that younger women today talk a whole lot more openly about where they float along the continuum, and that they do that easily and own it. And I think our generation, I was having a conversation with a woman the other day, and I said something about, she wanted to know what other podcast topics we were going to cover. And I said, I think we really should cover one that was similar to that, about sex and about the assumptions that people make. You're a pillow princess. And I don't think we're good at talking about that. And also, based on some of my personal experience, the moment at which you face that in some way is, the timing is not good if it's in the bedroom or otherwise.
Yes.
So anyway, to me, I was sort of snickering to myself, because I love how you're bringing forward these things about us that we haven't faced as in our 60s. I'll speak for myself, that we don't talk about, but they exist within us.
They do. And I'm a curious person, and I ask people questions a lot because I want to learn and know things and portray them correctly when I do filming or other type of storytelling stuff. But with women, I've done apps. I've done the Chronicle. If you've done the Chronicle, I mean, you're hardcore. You are seriously. You have no fear. I have no fear. I once met this woman. She was brilliant. It was St. Patrick's Day. I said, I'll be at the bar with a giant lime green bow on my head. I was playing a game of pool, and I feel a tap on my shoulder, and I turn around, and there is this magnificent 6-foot woman, goth, this beautiful face of makeup, a full leather duster, these fingerless gloves with little spikes, and she just looked glorious. Ooh. And most people would be afraid of her. And I looked like the cousin in the Munsters, the blonde woman, just the normal one, of running around the Munsters. That was the kind of bar I was the weirdo not to get near with that big green bow. And the woman looked at me and said, "Would you like to go to my apartment?" I said, "Absolutely." I just am like, this is a once in a lifetime experience. That's how I approach life generally. What is the saying is, an unexamined life is not worth living. I'm examining. So
I love that.
My car had been towed. So she had to drive me to the tow yard, which was down Slaughter before anything was built. It was pitch dark.
I've been there.
Huge, magnificent, all leather clad person. And I just looked at her and I said, "I'm sorry, but I'm compelled to touch you." And she was like shaking at me. She would normally be the imposing party. But we dated briefly because it was the kind of fantasy date, not all. And I came up with the saying, you date to sate or date to mate. That was it.
Oh, I like it. I like it.
Because that was not.
I'll bet it was.
It was. And I was sated. And then I've since seen her. It's been many, many years, but that's a good life, to be open, because you don't know anything. When, it tells you a lot about yourself too. So I've done the hardcore, meeting strangers in a bar kind of stuff, from a little teeny paper ad, all the way to the dating apps, all the way to the lesbian groups that are the Facebook groups. Met women that way. That, lesbian bars don't exist the way they used to.
No, they don't.
So you don't meet them in person anymore.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, Michelle. If you were speaking to yourself as a young lesbian dater, what piece of advice would you give yourself?
I would say, don't take things too seriously, and don't stay in relationships longer than you should. Some relationships are just part of the journey. They are not the destination. And so not to be so serious and to get so mired in them, and just to have more fun. I'm doing that. I mean, that's, now that I'm in my 5 years to retirement, that's kind of my goal too, is to have some fun. But I had 2 very serious relationships in my 20s, and I wished I had dated more than I did, because that was like 7 years of, I lived with 2 different women separately, but it was back to back.
And it's good to clarify that.
Yeah.
It wasn't a throuple.
We didn't have those then. Not like
I'm sure we had, but we had all of that. We just weren't talking about.
Yeah, well, right. Then they were not. I mean, there was a little bit of, I'm not going to lie, there was a little bit of overlap, but basically it was 2 of us living in a domicile, and then a different 2 of us living in a domicile. I would just try to not take it so seriously, not stay so long, just laugh more.
I love that.
Go out more. And just the days I met people were the days I didn't look my best. I literally would sleep in my clothes, get up. I would do these tests. I would sleep in my clothes, get up, not even comb my hair, just put on some red lipstick. That was a tip I got from that first woman I met. Go anywhere and I could meet people, so just be open. I used to get a little charge like, the next person I see could be the one.
Oh my gosh.
So I would just be like, I'm going to go to the movies and I could meet someone there. And so I want you to take a second and bring back from perspective the end of the movie where the woman runs the purse out to the woman she's been looking at. I had been many years later at a Lady Longhorn basketball game, and I had gone by myself because I'm bold.
And we don't call them the Lady Longhorns anymore. But
what do you call them now?
We just call it women's basketball.
Women.
Okay,
I make that same mistake too.
Women's basketball. I'm sitting there by myself, and I look over. I see this woman who looks very familiar to me, and I'm like, "Gosh, she looks familiar. I sat on a ton of committees. I'm sure it's from there." So the game ends. She and her friend walk out, and they left their purse behind.
It was meant to be.
I grabbed that purse and I ran it out, and I'm running this purse out, and I'm like, I didn't see this in a movie. I made this movie.
I love it.
I ran that purse out. It didn't end like I thought it would, like in my film, But I saw that woman a month later at Les Dance at a bar, and we reacquainted and dated for over 3 years. She is
I love that. And that is a fantastic story. It's our life imitating art.
It is. A purse is powerful.
It is. I mean, it's a topic to discuss. You could, if you see someone looking at you, you could intentionally leave it and see if they'll bring it. I mean, that is also a flirting. I know you covered flirting, but to have that interaction. When I was younger, when people wore watches, I used to slip my watch off and go up to a nice looking woman and ask if she had the time, because that was my in on those things. I sound like a shark. I'm just a very open person and just like meeting people.
Are those still your moves today?
No, because no one wears a watch. I've had to come up with some other things. But you know what was good? It happened at a garage sale. I was listening to Chapel Roan. And so I met this really young girl that I would never have gone out with. But her mother and our cats are friends. And so I was trying to show pictures of my cat, and Chapel Roan kept coming up, which was a subliminal message to this beautiful young woman that I was like her. And I thought, okay, I can work with this. This is a new way. When people don't wear watches, I can just have little, set some pictures on my phone that, oh, look at that, and yeah.
Cat lady.
A cat. I had a cat.
A cat.
It's
kind of like the guys with fish pics on apps there, Michelle.
Yeah, I know. But I would need, some days I'm like, I'm barely a lesbian. I have one cat. And I have a girlfriend. I would need 3 more cats and a thicker sweater to make this more interesting.
Or a dog. I need a dog.
Or a bird, if I really wanted. Birding is so huge. There is a large contingency of lesbians who do birding.
Well, there you go.
Jane and what was her name in the Beverly
Hathaway. Miss Hathaway.
You know what? It's so funny because the first girl I ever kissed, her name's Barbara. I can say that name. She said to me one day, "You know who's got good arms? That Jane Hathaway." And I was looking at her, I thought she was going to tell me a real person. She goes, "That Jane Hathaway, she's got some arms." And I'm like,
our younger listeners have,
they've checked out now. What in the hell are they talking about?
I know, but I just looked at her like, you have to get a job. It's important. They were talking about Jane Hathaway, but yes, she was a lesbian, and those were our role models back.
Our role models, Jane Hathaway. Michelle, it has been so much fun having you on the podcast. I want to just recap because I think a few of the things that you said were really important. The first thing is just having fun, letting yourself be open, taking some risks, like you putting your ad in the Chronicle years ago. I think those are the ways that you can find yourself successful in the dating bee, just being willing to have fun, being willing to take risks, and being willing to be open. Rachel, what did you hear?
My favorite was, you can date to sate or date to mate. I love it.
Too.
I love that saying. Yes. And I do very much appreciate you talking about not taking things too seriously and not trying to overanalyze or push something to a place where it doesn't belong or it's not ready to go there. So I like that. And I also like you bringing forward this idea of not assuming just because somebody carries a purse or identifies as a femme does not mean that they can't wear a tool belt and who knows what else they might be able to do.
That is correct. I could have plumbed that house like a professional, but they were all in my way at the sink. They just didn't let me open that purse up.
They were judging that purse a little too quick.
I could run with that, but I'm going to just leave it right there.
That's right. Well, we want to thank all of our listeners for listening. Please keep sending us your questions. Please keep sending us your stories. Follow us on Instagram. We are at Get Dateable. And please keep sharing our podcast with your friends. Our audience is growing, and part of why it's growing is because you guys are sharing it with other people.
Thank you all so much for having me. I love the podcast. I love the goal. I love the connections. Just keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much for being our first guest. You were fantastic, and we will look forward to seeing you again soon.
Remember, be bold, be kind, and for the love of queer dating, don't text your ex, Stay dateable
AF.